Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Breaking into Tech through your MBA class. My name is Laura Nelson, and first I'm going to take a couple minutes to introduce myself. I was an art major at Carnegie Mellon University, and I'm also a full-time MBA graduate of the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. So I was a member of the admissions committee there. Before business school, I worked in film and television, first at a major studio, MGM, and then at a large talent management agency called Brillstein Entertainment Partners. After graduation, I worked for over a decade in tech in both GM and marketing leadership roles with public, seed, and Series A through E tech companies. First, I worked at an AOL subsidiary to kickstart my tech career before moving on to high-growth B2B software startups. My last two companies were acquired, and the experience was super valuable in seeing different organizations through different stages. I've also been an MBA admissions consultant for the last 14 years with two of the top consulting firms and my own company. I've steered hundreds of people toward top MBA programs. I'm a member of AGAC, which is an association of graduate admissions consulting professionals. It accredits members and gives us direct access to admissions committee members. We had our annual conference in June in New York and met with admissions officers from around the world. And I've picked up a lot of great tidbits from what they had to share there. So my professional experience and admissions experience to date make me uniquely qualified to talk about today's topic, pivoting your career into the tech industry and articulating your career goals. Over the last 14 years, I've worked on almost every program imaginable, including full-time, part-time, dual degree, executive, online, you name it, at all of these programs and many of the ones that are not on this list. So with that in mind, let's dive into today's agenda. Here are the things that I want to cover with you all here. So first, we're going to talk about why tech. There are a lot of benefits to working in the tech industry, and I'll review some of the most fundamental benefits. Then we're going to explore tech career functions and companies so you can gain a better understanding of the options available to you, along with an overview of what tech company funding looks like and who's hiring. Next, we'll review program criteria that help you pivot into tech. It's important to understand the resources available to facilitate this career change and what to look for as you evaluate MBA programs. We're going to conclude with just a brief overview of how to tell the story of your career pivot into the tech industry as part of the MBA process. Because if you don't nail this, you're not going to have the opportunity to make the transition, or it's just going to be that much more difficult. And then finally, at the end, I'm going to leave several minutes for Q&A. So I'm going to try to keep an eye on the chat while we move along here, but keep in mind, it's not always easy to do. So if I miss your question throughout, please ask again at the end. So with that in mind, let's get started. First, with answering the question, why tech? Let's talk about why people get into the tech industry in the first place. If you're in this session, you probably have a good idea, but reviewing and understanding these benefits will really help you find the right path and set your application and career transition up for success. It's important to consider your goals and what you'll potentially gain from a tech career. So first and foremost, candidates seek tech roles to improve their hireability, growth, and earnings potential. No surprise there, right? Tech companies, especially startups, offer immense growth opportunities that MBA graduates can rapidly climb the ladder and lead to accelerated career growth and higher earning potential. Another benefit that candidates seek out when joining the tech industry is to drive a greater impact across their market or industry. So tech roles often involve solving complex problems, and depending on the product, can end up making a significant impact on businesses or on society at large. MBA candidates are drawn to tech careers where they can contribute to projects that have broad-reaching influence right? And align their aspirations for that type of meaningful work. Third, candidates seek out tech roles to gain diverse experience across functions. That's not to say that tech workers transition from engineering to marketing and so on, but rather, depending on the size of organization and stage of growth your company is at, you have a greater opportunity to work cross-functionally, as this is often ingrained in tech culture. Next, candidates seeking tech roles are often attracted to the industry's ability to innovate and disrupt. So MBA candidates can actively contribute to cutting-edge developments, groundbreaking solutions, and this really does help to foster a dynamic and intellectually stimulating environment. Fifth, aspiring entrepreneurs flock to the tech industry for its access to entrepreneurship opportunities. So many tech startups and other companies offer an MBA platform, or rather a platform for MBA graduates to explore entrepreneurial endeavors. You can act like an owner within a tech organization. MBAs can apply their business acumen to create and shape innovative products, services, or even eventually launch their own startups. And then finally, a huge benefit to joining the tech industry concerns networking and industry connections. In my experience, anyways, the most difficult part of working in tech was getting into tech. Not to say the jobs weren't difficult, but that first transition was. Once I was able to prove myself, the next role and the next role and the next role after that became more easy to obtain. So MBA programs with strong connections can offer access to influential alumni networks and industry relationships within the industry. And of course, that will eventually open doors for you and your career. So these are just some of the most compelling reasons to pursue a career in tech, and probably and hopefully these are top of mind already for you. So if you're here, you may be wondering how to make that transition, right? And importantly, where to do it. So this is just a sample of just a few of the top MBA programs and the proportion of graduating students that are headed into the tech industry. So as you can see, the tech offer acceptances comprise a good chunk of students heading into the tech industry and, of the graduating classes. Stanford's GSB and Berkeley Haas are on the high end here, no surprise based on where they're located. And, there are a smattering of programs that have students that accept tech offers in the top 15 or, in the 15 or 20% range. So we're going to get back to the school evaluation and criteria selection in a little bit. But first, I want to focus on you and your goals. So as you plan on your career transition to tech, it's important to determine two things. What do you want to do? And who do you want? And where do you want to do it, right? Who do you want to do it with? So first, let's talk about that first one. Let's talk about the what. Tech companies hire MBAs across a broad range of functional areas, including many of them that you see here, and others that haven't even been dreamed up or that I haven't listed, right? It's important to know that the type of role may well depend on the stage the company is in. So for example, seed and early stage tech startups, think Series A, for example, they're less likely to hire MBAs in strategy, general management roles. Those roles are more likely found in publicly traded tech companies. The needs of tech companies evolve over time as their funding stages and as they work through their life cycles. So it's important to be aware that some companies are more likely to favor some specialties or skill sets in some areas at an earlier stage than they are at others. So here's an example of what that looks like. My background, it's in marketing. I've worked at companies that run the gamut in funding cycles. At one organization, I joined early on and focused almost exclusively on growth marketing to meet our growth marketing targets. So that's a more likely path for a marketer at an early stage company, right? Like to drive growth and facilitate revenue. If you're a brand marketer, on the other hand, you're more likely to join a later stage or public company. So we're going to get to the differences across those types of companies in a couple minutes. But overall, some companies are more MBA friendly, whereas others are less likely to pay an MBA salary. So keep that in mind as you peruse job listings and as you search for tech opportunities. So as you narrow your functional focus, it's important to ask yourself the following questions. So what interests me and why? Here, I'm referring to the functional focus, like the things we saw on the prior slide. It's much more difficult to excel in something that you don't enjoy doing day in and day out. No surprise there. Next, assess what you're good at and how you work. So if you're more naturally inclined with financial forecasts and spreadsheets, for example, you're less likely to find yourself in business development or in a sales role. Some roles demand a certain skill set of technical and soft skills that will require you to collaborate with other functions in other tech jobs, whereas others may require less collaboration and are more siloed. Finally, assess which skills and experiences you have that may translate to certain functions and certain companies. So reading job descriptions is going to go a long way to help you to determine your fit for future tech roles. So I've covered a little bit about what to do. Now we're going to lean into where you want to do it. To give you a little overview on the tech ecosystem, focusing mostly on the US for the purposes of this presentation. Thankfully, the tech ecosystem in the US is massive. It's estimated that there's over 500,000 tech companies in the US. It's the second largest industry in the country behind healthcare. The US tech industry accounts for 35% of the global tech market. And then finally, the jobs are plentiful. The largest states with tech jobs are California, Texas, New York. Those are the leading markets. So what these stats illustrate really is that there's a ton of opportunity in the industry. It can be overwhelming, and at times your challenge will be to strategic about where to focus your energy and recruiting efforts. So with that in mind, keep these key considerations front of mind. So I'm going to go through a few of the things, like as you evaluate tech companies, what do you want to hone in on? What will make you happy and what will make you excited day to day? The first consideration is who the company sells to. Is it a B2B or a B2C company, or is it both, right? This is something to determine where your interest lies. So my experience is all in B2B software, primarily in B2SMB software. So that's where I focus, a lot of my time and energy in job searches. If you're just entering the industry, you can take a more broad approach. However, if you have a specific interest in, say, consumer platforms, I recommend that's where you spend your time and your research. Next, think about what excites you. So tech roles can be a real grind. It's important that you are excited about and believe in the products that you work on and sell every day, no matter what role you're in. Are you excited to get out of bed every morning to work on this, or could you take or leave it? I was a marketer, as I mentioned, and this was a huge consideration for me. Being on the front lines and generating leads and revenue for sales, I had to be passionate about the products that I was talking about. At one point, I found myself interviewing for roles with companies serving different markets just to learn more, but what I discovered through this process is I couldn't motivate around certain solutions. That was valuable learning for me and just something for you guys to think about and to consider. Next consideration. Do you want to work for a hardware company, a software company, or something else in tech? Is that important to you, or are you open to options? So one of the options in the something else category might be a marketplace. So an example of marketplace, eBay or Our very own Leland, that's an example of a marketplace too. Think about what types of products are you excited to help others use or discover. Next, think about the industry and the target customer. This is important no matter the function you're in. For me, this was small business, and because of my background, I knew software can have a tremendous impact on a business's communication systems and operations. That excited me personally. But if you're not excited about solving a particular customer's problems, you may be better suited for another organization and another type of customer. Next few things are pretty universal across tech and other types of jobs, but I wanted to make sure I created a complete list. And this next one surrounds location. Are you looking for a company and product with national and global reach? And what about that work environment for you? If you're just entering the tech industry, is it important that you have close proximity to your colleagues? This really may rely on your preference and how you prefer to learn and work, but it's an important thing to consider. Alongside that, work-life balance, comp, and benefits, these are going to look different for tech roles across companies at different points in their maturity. They may look less appealing to you at seed or early stage startups and will be a lot more competitive at publicly traded companies. But think about what you will prioritize. And this next consideration goes a little bit hand in hand with the target customer. Do the company's external mission and values resonate with what you're looking for? And is that a priority for you in your job search and career? And next, think about how your first tech job serves your mid and long-term goals. It's likely that you're going to be changing roles more often than you might in a more traditional business career. So does that environment foster learning, networking, and facilitate growth in your tech career? And then finally, consider the level of funding that the company has attained and what that means for your role and development as a tech professional. So I've mentioned companies at different stages of the life cycle, and that really does have an impact on certain facets of your tech role and responsibilities. So I'm going to spend some time on this in the next couple of minutes so you can understand what I'm talking about and how this might affect your considerations. So let's spend a few minutes on tech funding, starting with the different types, right? I've broken things down into 3 categories, more or less, including seed-funded tech startups. So these are the earliest stage tech companies that are developing what we call a minimum viable product and trying to establish product market fit. Generally, they're funded by accelerators, incubators, angel investors, et cetera. At this stage, they're comprised of founders who are also operators in the business, and generally just a handful of people or so. So unless you follow the tech press religiously, it's likely that you haven't heard of companies in this space. So the next type, we have our Series A, B, C, and beyond tech companies. This is a broad range, I'll admit. But these companies have moved on from the seed stage, and they've attracted investments from some combination of VCs, PE firms, investment banks, and others to scale. They've found the appropriate product market fit. They're hiring people to fuel that growth. So you've definitely heard a few companies at these stages. Third category I'm going to cover here is our publicly traded tech companies. These are the established brands that have achieved a certain scale and revenue. So you know a lot of these brands, though not all, because this really is a mix of B2B and B2C organizations. This is the quick lay of the land and where these types of companies are in their maturity. So now you have that lay of the land. Let's consider the benefits and drawbacks of joining companies at every stage. So back to the seed-funded tech startup, it's going to offer tremendous growth for your career, opportunities to advance, prove yourself, and a more immediate opportunity to drive an impact in your day-to-day work. There's some drawbacks, though. Drawback is that they're higher risk. They may have fewer resources. For instance, you might be making copies or running to FedEx at some point. I certainly have done that. And they also, generally speaking anyways, offer lower comp, or you might get some combo of lower comp, higher equity. This might not meet your expectations of an MBA salary. Going back to the series A, B, C, Beyond category. And again, this is a very broad category, so I am generalizing. These companies do have that extra funding that I mentioned. They have more resources. You'll find more structure among teams and departments in these types of companies in general. And you'll find different patterns and behaviors overall. But it really kind of just depends on how the company is doing at any point in time. And with that additional investment comes more responsibility. Workers at these companies have to answer not just to their customers, but of course, you've got a mix of PE and VC members, depending on your investment mix, of course, who are on your board and overseeing your company's strategy. Finally, for your publicly traded tech companies, these are among the most financially stable and at times the most secure in terms of jobs. Though we've seen a lot of volatility in the market, this is not always the case. There's always going to be cycles of boom and bust. So be aware that if you're working at a large publicly traded tech company, you are not immune to layoffs. On the whole, though, companies in this category offer the most competitive comp packages and benefits. However, they don't always move as fast as companies in these other classes. So there's always exceptions to these generalizations, but these are the rough guidelines. So hopefully that provides you with some context on the different types of funding that tech organizations have at different points in their life cycles and their benefits and drawbacks. With that in mind, let's take a look at who's hiring, right? So I took a look again at these class of 2022 employment reports across top programs, and I pulled a sampling of some of these employers. So as you can see, there's a broad range of larger publicly traded companies, all brands we know, along with a mix of, some series A through whatever funding companies and other companies that we haven't heard of. So again, this is just a sample of tech organizations that are hiring new MBAs. Many programs don't report all of the organizations that hire their graduates, especially those that hire just one. So don't feel limited by this list. Next, so that was an overview of, where we're coming from, right? And in terms of like what the, ecosystem looks like out there. And next, we're going to talk about, great, how do you get there? Let's talk about finding that best MBA program, right? We had looked at a proportion of each class, 2022, again, data from the employment reports. But I really encourage you all to look beyond these numbers. This is only one data point that some of these top programs are sharing with you and that you should take into consideration as you evaluate top programs. But instead, I encourage you to take a more holistic look and find the best MBA program for you and your needs. So here's what that looks like. I'm going to take you through at least how I encourage my clients to look at this holistically and make a strategic bet on which programs are going to apply to facilitate their tech goals. So first, and probably most obviously, you got to ask yourself, does this MBA program have any level of tech industry focus? Take a look at the curriculum, which means individual courses, often electives in this area, in addition to concentrations, programs, and faculty expertise, and see what they have to offer. Next, consider the program ranking and reputation in tech. So I'm going to qualify this by saying rankings, they're not everything. but this is just a single data point that may go into your holistic evaluation. So please don't let this be the only factor driving your decision-making. Next, it's crucial that you gain an understanding of that student experience and how the programs offering are facilitating students' career goals in tech. This is an essential part of your research. And speaking of tech goals, career services is an essential place to look too, particularly looking at those placements in internships and post-MBA jobs. And then finally, make sure that you check out where alumni are working and living, right? Is this the tech talent pool? Is the tech talent pool shallow, or are alums playing a vibrant role in the tech industry? It's important to assess, as alums are going to be a critical resource for you and your career. I don't know why I said finally, because I definitely have some more points here for you guys to consider. Location is going to be important to some of you, particularly if you're hoping to stay in the area or make direct links to your employers, right? I highlighted those big markets, California, Texas, and New York. Don't feel limited by schools there, although they do have fantastic programs. If you're dead set though on a particular location and they have more than one program, choose wisely, right? You might want to double down in that particular area. So it can be beneficial to go to school there. I don't know how this happened. Excuse me, let me just fix the slides for a moment. Seem to skip ahead. So talking about what to think about in terms of how to evaluate programs holistically, but what I'm highlighting here on this next slide is all of the resources that are going to help you do that, right? So obviously the program website, that's critical. It's the fundamental place where you're going to first discover, the basic information about a school's, tech offerings, course curriculums, programs, etc. But make sure you dig into those class profiles and employment reports too. Next, I want you to seek out some third-party publications and what other sources write about tech offerings. This can be sources like Poets and Quants, Business Week, other types of publications. And again, don't take anyone's ranking or a sole point of view as your point of view, but incorporate those opinions in your holistic evaluation of programs. Next thing, student ambassadors and club officers. Please do not skip this step. This is super crucial to understand, how effective programs are at placing new graduates in tech roles. So don't skip it. My recommendation to my clients is to ask students for 10 to 15 minutes of their time and pepper them about their experiences navigating tech offerings and securing their internships is just an example. Often they'll give you more time than that, but it is a really reasonable ask to put out there, for someone you don't know. Obviously, in-person events and webinars, these are great opportunities to gain context about MBA programs and ask about tech opportunities in an interactive setting. Just make sure that your questions are relevant and may be of interest to others in attendance. And then finally, LinkedIn. This is a tremendous resource, especially if you're looking at a particular program and want to see, a global view of where alumni are based, where they're working. And it's, of course, a great opportunity to network too. So same rules apply to alums, if you're asking for their time, I recommend asking for that 10 to 15 minutes and asking about their career progression and their experience at a program. And these are just my quick tips on what resources are available to you as you discover tech careers and the perfect MBA program to facilitate them. So next, I'm just going to touch on a few things, a little bit out of scope, but I think that are relevant to how you put this all together for your application. So very much in tune with the application process and really focusing on pivoting your career to tech. And the first point here is to do your homework, right? We talked about the resources available and how you should think about it. Figure out what you want to do and where you want to do it. Next, make sure that you draw some links from the past to the future. And that's all about discussing your transferable skills and suitability for certain tech roles. So numerous candidates are transferring into the tech industry. There's definitely a precedent before you. So your challenge during the admissions process is painting that picture for the admissions committee and leveraging students and alums to provide additional details and help you back up your hypotheses through this process. And then third, simply describe how an MBA is the bridge to your future. Share courses, programs, and resources as appropriate. So not all programs are asking why this program for your MBA, but do this for the ones that ask. And rather than writing a list and describing what a class or program is, instead discuss how it's going to benefit this career transition for you. And then my last tips are a little more holistic and can apply to anyone, regardless of whether they are applying for a tech job or any other career route. And these all center around how you want to tell your story, right? My first tip is to show, don't tell. So think about your essays as personal narratives. There's endless possibilities in how to approach these, but remember that essays are an opportunity for you as a candidate to stand out and share something unique about you and something that you've experienced. So bring the passion to that story. Another tip I have along these lines is just to break free from that 5-paragraph essay format that we all learned in high school. You don't need that intro paragraph. You don't necessarily need those concluding points. Word count doesn't always allow for it, so don't feel limited by that format. My next tip here is to create a strong hook to engage the reader off the bat in your essay. This might be a quote, a story, a point of conflict to draw the reader into your narrative. It's much more compelling that way. It can involve a stressful moment at work, an emotional personal journey, a point of inspiration, or something else entirely. And then finally, write your essays from a point of view that is personal and authentic. So resist the urge to be overly formal. I wouldn't say be too casual in your writing. Tell a story that could only be told by you in your words. So I know that is a lot of information that I just threw at you guys, but I hope that some of it was valuable. As I mentioned earlier, I would love to take your questions. I'm going to pause here for a few minutes while you think about what might be unclear or where you could use a little more context or detail. So feel free to use the chat tool to ask questions. I'm going to get to as many as I can. I've also included my QR code here. This goes straight to my coaching page. If you're interested in scheduling an intro call and discussing your own situation, I'm happy to do so. I've got a discount code with me on an hourly or package basis for round 2, but I do have a limited availability. So If you want to take advantage of that, do so before November 10th. But yeah, happy to take your questions and talk about, how this might apply to your situation or things that you're wondering. I will say I do work with a lot of clients who are coming from what I'll call like a pretty typical tech career path. That's to say, like, they may be coming from an engineering or CS, computer science background, and be leveraging the MBA to pivot into product management. So that's one popular path. I've also worked with people coming from marketing in other industries who, they might have done marketing for, say, pharma or something like that, and are leveraging the MBA to transition into tech, either into something like product marketing, growth marketing, digital marketing, something like that. So those are, two popular career paths. I've seen, consultants go into product management, but certainly they can go into product marketing as well. So there's a lot of different ways that you can mold what you've done in the past to help create what your future vision looks like in tech. So yeah, I will leave it here for just another moment. If you have a question, feel free to drop it in. And, we'll stay on, but I'll let Leland jump in and talk about just a couple things that are coming up for the organization.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, before we can go back to Q&A, I would love to talk a little bit more about what we have going on here at Leland. Next week we have an awesome GMAT and GRE week. So if you're in the boat of preparing for MBA applications and you're still wanting to retake your GMAT or GRE, or you're just looking to take it for the first time in the next few weeks, we have an awesome event week. As I mentioned, next week we'll be covering a variety of different topics and sections of each exam, including quant, verbal, and also testing strategies, and covering study skills. And these will be hosted by other Leland coaches who have experience coaching clients for GMAT GRE, and also our professional coaches. So if you're interested in signing up for this week, I will drop a link in the chat for you to sign up directly. And it's a ton of awesome events. It's, I think, around 12 events that we have. You can sign up this link right here. Oh, I think there is a question in the chat. Oh,
yeah, I'm happy to take that, Tina. The question is, for the immediate post MBA role, is it necessary to specify a company, or is it fine to just mention B2B, B2C, company, stage, industry, etc.? I do think the more successful essays, and I do push my clients to do this, is identify a couple companies. And I think by putting that, context, like, or other B2B or B2C, mid-series stage companies, is great. The reason for that, it brings more specificity to your goals and provides the reader and the AdCom with a better understanding of what you're going for, what you're interested in, what you're passionate about. Dalan, do you want to pick up from here?
Sure. And yeah, that was I just covered our GMAT GRE week, dropped the event sign up in the chat right there. But other than that, thank you for joining this event. If you haven't signed up for a free Leland profile yet, be sure to do so, and by scanning the top left-hand QR code for other resources, guides, and overall help to get you into your dream MBA program. And for everyone here that's left, be sure to drop a thank you in the chat for Laura for teaching this awesome workshop tonight.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Have a great night. Thanks, Laura.